G'day YouTube, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about my experiences with the Spektrum Firma Brushless setup for the SCX24. This little setup has gotten some really bad reviews all over YouTube. Pretty much anywhere that a review has been left for this thing, people say it sucks. It recently went on sale for 50 bucks and curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to check it out. I wanted to find out more about it and I'm really glad that I did. The motor is awesome. It's going to be a keeper in my Gladiator here, and as you can see, the slow crawl is excellent. If you're interested in finding out more, stick around. It's coming right up. You may have seen from my last video that I picked up this little white Gladiator to add to the collection. I really haven't done a lot of mods to it so far. The first thing that I really started thinking about was motor options. I was thinking of some different FuryTech options. Typically you've got to replace the motor mount, you've got to change the configuration of the vehicle in order to fit those larger motors in. So that led me in the direction of this little setup here. Even though the reviews weren't so great, I was really interested in finding out more about this tiny little motor here. The cool thing about the motor is it mounts to the stock location without making any changes to the vehicle at all, and that was something that was really interesting to me. So let's jump into why this gets such bad reviews and where Spektrum went wrong. The problem is right here. This little controller here appears to be a rebranded Surpass Hobby controller. From what I could see online, these controllers are typically used in Mini Z race vehicles. So Spektrum hasn't gone and engineered their own speed control for this thing. They've just gotten a vendor to etch their name onto the outside of it, and I don't think that the programming is optimized for crawling in any way. So to get this motor to crawl the way that I needed it to, step number one was to put this back in the box that it came from. With the ESC safely back in the box where it belongs, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I purchased this system on sale with no intention of running it stock with that controller. I wanted the motor. It actually worked out to be a few bucks cheaper to buy the whole system than the motor on its own. I ran the full system in the truck out of curiosity. It wasn't awesome. So with that out of the way, let's put this aside and let's talk about the best part of the Spektrum Firma system, which is this awesome little motor here. This is the reason why I wanted to check this motor out. It's super compact, it's super lightweight, it just sits down in the stock location like that. There's no weight penalty, there's no weight up high. It's a really nice option, super clean install. This motor is a censored 2-pole 4500 kV in-runner. Not really the best specs for a rock crawler. To get the best slow crawl out of it, I've chosen the Dinky D-Drive Micro Sport ESC. This is a sensorless ESC running the AM32 firmware. Now, the reason I chose this ESC, one of my favorites, it's got a really nice linear throttle feel at the throttle trigger. It's just really nice to drive. It's also more configurable than the FuryTech ESCs. You can change the settings on the FuryTech through the app, but when you're going to select a motor, it only gives you FuryTech options for the motors, whereas with the AM32 firmware, you can go onto your PC and you can tell it that you're running a 2-pole 4500 kV motor, and it just does a really good job of driving this thing smoothly. You could see at the start of the video that the slow crawl is epic. There is a little bit of a hitch when moving from that slow crawl into conventional brushless operation, but it's not too bad. It's pretty manageable with this ESC. Now, this is a sensorless ESC and a censored motor. But that doesn't really matter. The censored part of the motor just means there's a Hall effect sensor or some kind of magnetic encoder in the back of the motor here to give positional feedback of the motor's rotor speed. Now, we're not using that. We've just left it unplugged. We're just running the 3 wires to the ESC like normal, and it runs really well. One other thing that I'll mention before we go and run this thing, something that I was a little bit surprised about with this being a tiny little motor with a high kV for a crawler. I thought this motor was going to heat up a lot, but I was really pleasantly surprised to find that this system runs super super nice and cool and efficiently. The motor and ESC never get anything above barely warm to the touch. I know someone's going to ask in the comments about these sliders. They're a 3D printed slider that I found on eBay. I won't go into a lot of detail on them in this video. I got them mostly to protect the body and to give me options for mounting the electronics. If you're interested, you can find them on eBay. They're by a company called Bosco Designs. Alright, that's enough about that. Let's get this thing out on the course and let's see how this setup runs. So as we head off on the backyard course here, the first characteristic of this motor that I'd like to mention, being such a tiny little motor with a small diameter rotor, it doesn't produce a lot of torque down low when the motor RPM is very low. So you'll find if the vehicle gets into a bind, you're not going to be able to push yourself out of that bind in those low, slow crawl ranges of the throttle. You're going to need to kick it up a bit, get a little bit more motor speed happening for the motor to be able to produce significantly more torque. So you get used to this driving characteristic fairly quick. It's actually a really nice little motor. It's one of my favorite brushless motors so far. I really like the driving characteristics of the Mofo SMP motor. That really suits my driving style. This is not that. It doesn't have the same level of torque. However, comparing it to something like the Mofo Revenge of Pancake, the purple Pancake motor, I much prefer the throttle feel of this Spektrum Firma right here. And as you can see, I'm showing off the slow crawl characteristics of the motor and ESC combination here. You've got that super slow precision driving, which I don't use all the time. I usually use it for descending, just like we saw there, or if the vehicle is right on the edge of its balance, if it's on a side hill or it's in some other precarious situation where you don't want to upset the chassis, you want to move very slowly and very carefully. That's a great time to employ those really low throttle ranges. A little bit here, I missed the line here, and you can see if this was a system that didn't have the same level of fine control, it would be easy to knock the vehicle off balance, but there I was able to reverse, reset the vehicle's position, and it wasn't an issue at all. So here again, I'm just showing off the low speed capabilities of this motor and ESC combo. As you can see, very slow crawl. It won't do well in a bind at those speed ranges, and there's a little bit of a hitch, which I'll show in just a second. You can see that little bump in RPM coming up out of those slow crawl ranges and into conventional brushless operation. It's really not that bad. When the vehicle's under load, it's quite manageable. And so far, I couldn't be happier with this motor. The fact that it takes up no space, doesn't add any weight, and it's got this level of performance, to me is just an excellent option. And something else that I really love about this motor is the fact that it is a 4500 kV motor. It does really well on 2S, and it's got a ton of wheel speed. I don't feel the need to step up to 3S, and that's a great thing in this Gladiator platform, because under that scale body with the interior and the bed out the back, there is not a lot of room left to run 3S, so the fact that it does perfectly well on 2S is just an added bonus to me. The slow crawl is excellent. The jump out of slow crawl into conventional brushless operation is not bad at all, and so far I'm really pleased with this Spektrum Firma brushless motor. There you have it, guys, the little Spektrum Firma brushless in-runner motor. It's definitely no slouch out on the rocks. I'm really happy with the way that the vehicle is driving. It's not going to be for everybody. I'm certainly not trying to push this motor and encourage more people to buy it. It's satisfied my curiosity and it's more than met my expectations. I'm definitely going to keep the motor in this truck. It's driving really, really nicely, and I find the more of these things that I build, keeping the truck lighter, keeping the truck narrower, just keeping it less capable in general, I have more fun with them. I find with some of the more capable rigs that I've built, I get tired of them quicker. They make everything too easy. You can hit all of the lines way too easy. My boys have both got SCX 24s that are modified, but they're lightly modified, and I sometimes find myself grabbing those to drive rather than the more capable trucks. So that's what this build here represents. It's going to be a little bit more scale, a little bit more simple, and I'm really enjoying it so far. Let me know your thoughts on the Spektrum Firma Brushless setup for the SCX 24. Is it a complete failure? Is the little motor that bolts into the stock location a hidden gem? Would you like to see other manufacturers follow that concept and engineer little brushless motors specifically for these things that drop into that stock location? I certainly would. I think it's a great concept, and I'd like to know what you guys think about that. If you got any value out of today's video, please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.